Hello friends, my name is Callie Robinson. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is a little different than what I usually do. Today is a sit down type of video, kind of like how I would podcast, but I wanted to make a YouTube video about it. If you have clicked onto the video, there is probably a reason. You may have experienced some sort of disordered eating in the past, or can also relate to me and my story about just binge eating, overeating, anything that might fall underneath that category. And before I even jump into this video and what I'm going to be chatting about, I am going to be very, very clear that I am not a medical professional. I am not a therapist by any means. I do not specialize in disordered eating or anything of the sort. I simply am a coach where I offer advice and what had worked for me. So hopefully, maybe you might find value from my story and the things that have helped me. I am not here to diagnose or act like I'm diagnosing you or anything of the sorts there. So if there is anything that is concerning, go out and reach out to some sort of medical professional, but just wanted to put that out there. Now, today we're talking about my personal story about how I recovered from disordered eating, specifically overeating and binge eating, and what my story looked like. So before I really jump into the things that I did, which will be towards the end of the video, and how I actually was healed from that, which by the way, it's not going to be what you expect, genuinely. I first want to give you a quick background of my story. So that being said, I'm going to scooch over just a smidge right here. And I actually have a document from a previous podcast episode that I launched actually this last week, I believe. So if you go to Purposed on Spotify, you will see that. Jumping into it, for nutrition, I was a competitive club gymnast. I didn't really have any idea how to actually eat for the sport that I was in. For example, I would think it's an accomplishment to be drinking coffees. I genuinely had the mindset of, oh, I'm just drinking coffees today. I'm just a girl. That's literally how I was when I was younger. And I thought eating healthy was eating vegetables and lettuce. And that's what I deemed healthy as. And I didn't start tracking macros until I was, I would say, about 17. So I ended up going to a privately owned gym. This is probably, I think in 2021 at this point. It was after COVID really started to kind of wind down a little bit more, and I ended up meeting a girl there, and she introduced me to tracking macros. I knew nothing really about it. I didn't know anything about protein or anything, and I was exposed to tracking from my mom. She never shoved it down my throat or anything. All I knew is that she whipped out MyFitnessPal and plugged it into her calculator, and that's all that I knew. And she lost weight that way, which my mom's transformation is crazy. She was an ultramarathon runner, absolutely insane woman. That was my first exposure to it, and I ended up actually following the girls' macros that introduced me to it. I literally knew nothing better. I was like, oh, okay, your number's this, I'm gonna follow that. And I ended up seeing great results. I was still in high school, and I remember I would go to Starbucks during our off break, and I'd get my little skinny latte. I can't even tell you what the order is, but I would get it so frequently, and I would track it. And I think I was using the MyPlate app. It wasn't even using MyFitnessPal, because the girl that introduced me to it was using MyPlate. And I started meal prepping for the first time, and I created my own little fitness and wellness story, and I was posting on that frequently and everything. And then I very quickly found a passion for this. I created my own Instagram page, which is still the current Instagram that I use today. If you were to scroll to the very bottom, you would see my posts from way back when. And so I got introduced to 75 Hard. And towards the end of my high school career, I kid you not, I literally graduated, and then I let myself have that day to have my favorite pasta. And then the next day I jumped straight into 75 Hard, and it transformed me. I honestly, if you know a lot of gymnasts, they deal with the all or nothing thinking. And my parents also think all or nothing. So if you look at my mom, for example, she used to smoke for 22 years of her life. I believe it's 22. It could be even more from that. She used to smoke for 22 years of her life, and then she ended up figuring out that she was going to be a grandma at 40 years old, because my sister got pregnant pretty early on. And for context, my sister is 13 years older than me, and that was a wake-up call for her. So she literally went from couch to 5K app and lost a lot of weight, started running ultra marathons from literally never running before in her life. And so if that gives you any context of the type of mindset that I had, and also being a gymnast on top of that, So I jumped into 75 hard and I saw great results from it. And if you don't know what like 75 hard entails, it entails doing two 45-minute workouts. One of them must be outside regardless of the weather. You must drink a gallon of water. You must take a progress pic every single day. You must follow a diet, not drink alcohol, and read 10 pages of a personal development book. And so I did that. I was seeing results. And also, I was never the girl on the team that had abs. And so when I was doing 75 hard and I started leaning out and seeing abs and seeing veins, I loved it. I was going to the gym 6 times a week, following this diet. And the diet that I followed was tracking macros. I started learning about bulking and cutting through social media, through lots of fitness influencers, just like a lot of you guys have learned about like your nutrition and wellness. Like there's an overabundance of information, especially now. And this is back in like 2021. So with the diet though, not only was I tracking macros and was that my diet, but I also I was like, no, I can't have any sort of processed food or baked goods or sweets or anything. So I cut myself off from that completely. I would bring my meal prep to like graduation parties. Since I was just graduating high school, lots of people helped like through those. And I started dealing with a lot of food noise. And that was something that was very like not normal for me. I was becoming obsessive over it. And I ended up going through a breakup. And initially that was like going to be the thing that set me over the edge, right? And this was a healthy breakup. And the guy and I, like, good terms. He was like, please don't let this like ruin your progress. You've been crushing it with 75 hard. Like, promise me that you're gonna, try your best to keep pushing through. And so I did. But with that, I started to catch myself eating less and less and having the mindset of like, oh, just because I'm not eating enough, I'm still following my diet. So I'm still in a cut. And so I started under eating. I lost a lot of weight really fast because I was sad and I wasn't nourishing my body well. So I lost a lot of weight all in one go. And then fast forward a little bit after that breakup, I remember I was on a boat with one of my friends up north when I was still living in Wisconsin, and her family brought cookies for this little boat day. And like all I could think about was these cookies. And I remember like texting my mom saying like, I think I'm going to quit. Like I feel like I'm, developing an eating disorder, all of this stuff. Like it was horrible. And I remember my mom being like, no, Cal, like push through, you got it. And then I literally just said, screw it. And so that day I said, screw it. I decided to, and at the time my friend's parents were like, they knew I was doing this challenge. And then later that day I was like, I decided I'm not going to follow through with this anymore. And so I ended up eating a lot of like the burgers and then the cookies, and then also eating like several bowls of cereal while I was there. Like I ate a lot. And the rest of the summer very much was like that. There was like a local ice cream place that I would always go to. I would never say no to that. And so this was the summer leading into my first and only semester of college. And I ended up putting on a lot of weight, like 20 pounds in a summer type of weight. And then that led into the whole restricting mindset. So my first semester of college, I ended up moving out of my parents' house, and I ended up living with a different family, started buying my own groceries, and I was a broke college student at the time. So I was buying the least expensive things, but very just highly processed, like the high protein, low calorie processed junk, because I thought in my brain it was cheaper. In reality, it definitely is not when you add things up in the grand scheme of things. And so I would like try to eat as little as possible throughout the day. And then I was absolutely like deprived by the end of the day. I very much just would do this whole like restrict and then overeat. For example, there's two scenarios I want to talk about. Number one is I would go to Qdoba a lot during the day, during school, and I would end up eating the entire bowl, even though I wasn't hungry. And like I wouldn't be able to save like half of it for later. I couldn't do that. I would force myself to finish it because I spent money on it. And that was like the first realization of like, okay, I'm doing this because I spent money on it and I value money and I have a scarcity mindset around food. So I'm forcing myself to eat this. And then number two, I remember the family that I lived with, they knew that my guilty pleasures were dark chocolate, Oreos, and peanut butter. Love all three of them. And I remember they got me the peanut butter Oreos. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't know these existed. And so I remember eating like 5 or 6 of them in one go. And then the next day I ended up having so many and I wanted to get rid of them, but I was like, I'm not going to throw these away because they spent money on this. And so I literally ate the entire pack and was like, screw it, I'm starting over tomorrow. And those are just 2 instances of several circumstances that had happened like that. Fast forward a little bit of time, I have reached so much pain in my just fitness journey and doing this whole cycle of being back and forth. It was exhausting. And so I finally decided to hire a coach. I had no idea how I was going to afford a coach, but I ended up reaching out to somebody that was a personal referral, and she helped me so much. And she was the one that gave me like a hybrid approach to like a meal plan. So it was a mix between macros and meal plan, and that helped me a ton. And so I just followed the plan from there, didn't have to think about it. And then I ended up leaving her for a little bit because I had car issues and I knew I wasn't going to be stepping on stage until then. So she was just doing my nutrition. She wasn't doing any sort of workout stuff. After finally, this fast forward to December of 2022, I ended up coming back to her. So I ended up signing up with her about a year-ish before that. And then I ended up coming back to her and signing on as a client and then jumping into my first ever bodybuilding prep, which was just so exciting. And then from there, I ended up competing and prepping. And I remember during my bodybuilding prep, I would like scroll and scroll and scroll at night, watching people have these like crazy cookies post show. And I would literally fantasize about it. And I remember telling myself, hey, you're not going to do that when you're going to have 1 cookie or 2 cookies. Like, nobody's going to bring you cookies post show. I ended up having several cookies post show. And I remember like in the middle of the day, I got a sandwich. I cleared my entire plate and all of my fries, and then some of my like friends' fries and my parents' fries that were there. And that night I ended up eating half the cookie after the show. But then I remember waking up in the middle of the night and finishing them at like 2 a.m. in the middle of the night while everybody was sleeping. Fast forward to the next day, I probably ate like 4,000 to 6,000 calories, if I were to guess. Crazy, because I had the mindset of like, I need to have all of this right now and I can't have it later. And that started a spiral. And I ended up leaving my coach because I was moving across the country. And that was the biggest mistake I could have ever made.
What's up? Editing Callie here. I missed a very significant piece of information here. This day where I had like 4,000 to 6,000 calories, I ended up trying to purge for the first and only time. And that night, I ended up running 4 miles in the dark by myself. And it was because I had so much guilt and shame, and I literally had no idea what else to do. And it's funny because I literally posted on social media that night of like, just raw dogged a run, like a 4-mile run for the first time ever in my life. And outsider looking in, it's like, oh, what an accomplishment. But in reality, like nobody knew behind closed doors that I felt so guilty and shameful from eating so much food. And that's why I chose to run. It was like, I literally had nothing, like I didn't know what else to do other than to just run, because it like literally, it's not only just a symbolic way of running from your guilt and shame, but that's literally how I felt. So, and that's only what I knew to do. So that's what I did at 10 o'clock at night alone. And I did that day.
That ended up leading into a lot of disordered eating patterns. I avoided stepping on the scale for Lord knows how long because I was afraid to confront what it would say, because I knew I was engaging in these horrible habits. Fast forward again, I end up indulging in getting high and drinking. And for a while I would drink because all my roommates were older than me, and it wasn't like binge drinking or anything, but when I drank, I would just eat and eat and eat. And then same thing when I would have edibles to go to sleep, which I was very reliant on for a good while, I would just eat and eat and eat. I remember I would not even wake up, I would leave my room, go down to our pantry and just eat like so many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, like entire bags of granola. I would fully black out when just indulging in these foods, and I would feel so guilty. It was like full on blackout episodes. I didn't even know that I like did that until I had like a come alive moment of like, what did I just do? That went on for a good bit. I thought I would be able to handle it myself. I was going without a coach. I would do the whole cardio thing, feeling just so defeated, restricting myself and binging. It was just a constant, like, I was tracking throughout the entirety of this time, and it was just horrible. Fast forward, I ended up finally hiring a coach. And even with him still, there would be moments where I would overeat. He would have like a building phase and then I would continue to overeat past them. Like I would eat my calories for the day and then I'd go to the pantry and have like a lot of chocolate chips with like dipped in peanut butter or something like that. And I was at the heaviest that I ever was. I ended up getting to like 140 pounds and I was the most uncomfortable that I ever was in my entire body. It was absolutely brutal. It was painful and I couldn't look at myself because I lacked so much self-trust because I was not a person of integrity. I simply was breaking promises to myself every single day. And so I ended up hitting like the heaviest weight that I was. I got married at one of the heaviest weights that I ever was. And it wasn't until my second prep where things started to change. So my second prep, that's when I kind of went on a almost keto type of diet because I was showing signs of insulin resistance. And that actually helped a lot. Having my coach walk me through it, having blood sugar balancing meals, just giving my body a break from the carbs and switching to a higher protein and fat diet, not like crazy, crazy low carb, but like lower carb, that helped a lot. And I was doing a lot of cardio at that point, and then I ended up pulling out of prep. My husband's best friend had actually passed away, and it was just a really hard season of life, and prep just didn't make sense. But I had a lot of peace about that, and I ended up reversing out of that prep really, really well. And so for the most part, I was still tracking my food. I wasn't necessarily cutting, but I also wasn't like trying to intentionally gain or anything either. I kind of was just like maintaining for the upcoming like big wedding celebration coming up in May. I was maintaining my weight and it felt really good at that time. And then right before we moved to Virginia in September of 2025, I ended up getting really sick and I get sick with salmonella poisoning. And that was literally the first time in my life since 2021 that I was okay not hitting my macros. Crazy. Yeah. So I got salmonella poisoning, went to the hospital for it. Like I couldn't eat. It was so hard for me to even eat crackers. Like I was okay with it. Before in the past, if I would get sick and I just wouldn't feel good, like I would literally force myself to eat to hit my macros. That's just how I did things. Like I'm a very big numbers girl. And that was the first time where I was okay not tracking for a good while. It was like over a month and some change. And I'm still with my coach at this point because I know I want to compete again. And I was also training for a half marathon at that point. And so we end up moving to Virginia. I'm not eating chicken still. I'm finally starting to get into the groove of things in terms of just like eating enough then. But I would go like the entire day really without like out eating a ton of food. And then I'd be like, oh, wow, like now I understand when people are like, oh, I forgot to eat today or something. Like I never understood that until that point. I end up training for this half marathon. I get better. I'm eating well. My coach is like, I don't even remember how many calories I was eating at that time, but like it was a lot. It was a good enough amount of calories to sustain me through half marathon training. And then in November of 2025, I jump into my prep and I'm still training for the half. So like the beginning of prep was kind of like a pre-prep phase almost. So I ran my half marathon. Then shortly after my half, I ended up jumping into actual prep. And that mindset of like, okay, like everything is being followed to a T. And that was that. And up until that point, I mean, that's kind of like where we're at now. Now, I would definitely say I'm very free from the binging side of things, and I feel healed from that. Now, here's the things and the pointers and the things that help me to move past those things. One of the biggest things that I believe helped me is surrendering it to the Lord, genuinely. I have done most of this journey without Him, and it really was not until I opened up my hands in my fitness journey as well to say, okay, God, I'm going to surrender the results to you and I'm going to find joy in this process and joy in the journey. I'm not going to be so fixated on the outcome. And once I finally learned how to do that, that's when I felt free. I think of the parallel of surrendering to God on a daily basis, right? You have to do that to yourself in your fitness journey. And I find even being a coach myself and having clients, like I find the people that surrender that and they are more focused on process-based goals rather than end result goals, those are the ones that have lasting results beyond that. And not only is it taking things off of yourself about me, how can I do this? What can I do? It more so is turning to the mindset of, which is point number 2, is turning the mindset of how can I steward what you have blessed me with well. I think of like the car analogy. It's like if you were given your best friend's car to borrow, you're going to take care of it. You're going to make sure that, you know, it's clean. You're not going to let things pile up in there or get dirty or have junk. Heck, you might even take it to the car wash. Like, you're going to treat it with extra care. But in our own car, sometimes we let trash pile up. We let it get dirty. Maybe we let the oil change go for too long. And so I think about trying to treat our bodies like we would want to treat a friend's car. It's because the Lord has given you a gift that, like, if you were given something to be able to steward well, like, I don't know, I don't want to return that back to the Lord. Not that like, it's like I don't want you to think it's like almost like a guilting way. It's more so like, I want to do this because I find it pleasing to the Lord, and pleasing the Lord pleases me. You know, that's like the mindset that I have going into it. So it's like, if God has blessed me with this body, which also, by the way, not everybody has fingers, legs, I mean, hands even. Like, some people aren't capable to have what is the normal. Finding gratitude and wanting to be able to take care of something well because it was a gift is kind of the mindset that had helped me shift everything. Number 3 is that I stopped dividing fitness and every other area of my life. I blended all of them. So rather than like every area of my life kind of going like this, it more so felt like this, especially when I opened up the possibility for the Lord to be welcomed into that. And also, number 4 is that I was open about my struggles. If I had a situation where maybe I overate, I told my coach. And it helps having a good coach that understands and isn't going to guilt you when you slip up, because guess what? We're all human and things like that happen. Having the mindset of like, okay, when you quote mess up, or if you fall off track, it's the mindset of you are acknowledging it and then you are going to move forward from that. Same thing with myself and even my clients. They hear me say this a million times over again. If they overeat, it's like, okay, cool. This is where we could have done better and what could have prevented that situation from happening. And we're going to use it as a learning experience to move on from next time. Because guilt and shame are only going to make things worse. And trying to hide it in the dark is only going to create it into a bigger monster. Catch the monster when it is little, not when it is a big thing that is going to be a massive thing to tackle. So it takes openness and vulnerability to be open about talking about these things, but also making sure that you have a circle that is able to support you through these things and through these hardships, that isn't going to guilt you, and helping people or allowing people into your life to be able to encourage and speak life into you. I have a whole podcast episode that dives deeper into how I healed my relationship with food. Overall, that is my personal story. I didn't want to make this episode like too crazy long. Number 1, because also my camera is getting close to dying, but I wanted to at least just like sit down and give you guys like a general idea and just something to kind of go off of and for you guys to have as a resource. And in this episode, it talks more so about like the actual practical steps that I went through. So having structure and predictability, ensuring to eat enough, talking about nervous system regulation of like creating an environment where your body feels safe enough rather than it operating out of a constant fight or flight state, rather than being in rest and digest. And then also integrating personal identity and faith. So this is a long episode. It also gives you like the very, very practical steps within it. These were just kind of like overarching ideas that you could implement, and also just hearing my own story as well. So I would love to offer those resources to you, and that episode will be linked in the description box below. If you like more sit-down videos like this, where I'm kind of like walking you through my journey and what things looked like, what I looked like during the time, I'm more than happy to create more like how-tos and my own story and tips and tricks type of things, on top of also vlogging and showing my everyday life. If you have any questions about this, feel free to comment them below or even DM me on Instagram. I would be so happy to talk to you guys. It's one of my favorite things to do. But thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Again, I hope you find value from it. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next video.